Welcome to Ability Assistance. My name is Phyllis Jones, Chair of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
And my name is Stacey Leibowitz, Secretary of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
Today, our guest is Governor's Council member Eunice Zeigler, and she represents District 5, covering several communities, including North Andover. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, nice to have you.
Yes.
Great to be here.
Now, you're new to the Governor's Council.
Yes, I am brand new. So in the election of November 2024, I was elected to serve on the Governor's Council in this district, District 5, which represents 36 cities and towns, including North Andover and the city of Methuen, where I'm from. And I was sworn in January, and so we are in month 3 of my service, so very nascent in my service in this capacity, but I'm really enjoying it. And one of the things that I think is so great about the Governor's Council is it is a body that has so much impact on our judicial system, but not many people know about it.
Well, and that you know, for attorneys and political junkies will know about it,
Right.
but the average person, they'll see that on the ballot and go, huh, well, what do you guys do? So why don't you explain a little bit of what exactly is the Governor's Council?
Yes. So I'll start by explaining a little bit why I feel there's that confusion around what it is. On the ballot, it says counselor with 2 L's. It doesn't say Governor's Counselor. And so people, and it's further down on the ballot too,
Yeah.
so people may have voted for it and just assumed it was something different. Maybe it's some other town or city position.
Or a lot of people will just vote the top candidates, you know, whether it be a
just sort of
presidential
check
or a
it off, yeah.
gubernatorial election.
Yeah, and a lot of people have left it blank too. We've
Yes.
seen that over the years when I've studied it. I've seen hundreds of thousands of blanks in this seat on the ballot. And so I want to change that. But the Governor's Council is a body that was established in the Massachusetts Bay Colony days. So originally it was titled Executive Council.
Okay.
And the Executive Council was a legislative body to the governor that helped to create a checks and balances between the governor's office and the people. So it's another step, another voice for the people. Our duties are very finite in that we focus primarily on the judiciary. So our judicial system, we are the final vote of approval on all judge appointments, the final vote of approval on parole board members, tax appellate board members, justice of the peace, notary public. So we help to review these candidates. We hold hearings for each candidate for these roles, and then we make our final decision. So it is very, very impactful, and it's another way for the community to get engaged because the process is open. Even if you didn't know before today that it is an open process, I'm here to let you know that it is open, in that if someone is looking to become a judge, they first have to be a lawyer first and have to have a record of practice within the court system that they're looking to apply for. So if they're looking to be a family and probate court judge, they have to have some background in helping families with issues of divorce, or helping families with issues of child placement and support services and things of that nature, in order to even be
Because it's a
vetted.
specialty.
It is a specialty, and if you're going to sit at a bench that's making decisions over whether a person should receive certain levels of support from the court system or from the state, you should have some background.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so,
As an attorney who's practiced before different courts, I can tell you that's important.
it's very, very important. And so a person would apply to become a judge, and then they go through 7 levels of vetting before they get to the governor's desk. And then the governor would then make a recommendation to the council. Then the council holds a hearing by which the candidate is able to come before the council with witnesses that can speak to their professionalism.
Why don't we back up a little bit? You said 7 different
Yeah.
layers
It's pretty
of
intensive.
Yeah. What are the steps? Okay, pretend I wouldn't do it, but pretend I make application to be a district court judge. And yes, I do have district court experience. So now I am a lawyer. I've practiced before the district court. I want to be a district court judge. I put in an application. What does the application entail?
Yes. So the application is a lengthy application by which you have to attach your resume. You go before the judicial nominating committee. Well, first you put your application through,
Right.
and then it's reviewed.
And you're saying a lengthy application. Are you talking about, do I put down cases that have been adjudicated in the court system that are public? That, because not every case is public, obviously, especially when you're calling
Right.
about probate and family court.
Oh, for sure.
Or juvenile court. But public cases and decisions, if there are written decisions from the bench, do I attach those? What exactly does the application look like?
Yes. So when you go through the application, it's really you telling your professional story. So you
Okay.
go through, and all your contact information you put in there, your educational background, any relevant experience to the legal field that you had while you were in college and in law school, you put that down. Any relevant fellowships or internships that you have, you put all of that down. So you're proving first on your educational merit and
Yes.
background. Then it goes into your professional background. So of course you go through, like any job, you go through all of the positions that you've held and significant cases that you were engaged in while you held those particular roles that relate to this, to the court that you're looking to become a judge in. So candidates would have to provide at least 3 to 5 cases and a summary of those cases as to what their role was within that case and the outcome of that case as well. Of course, they would have to put detailed information as to who the presiding judge was, what the case was, what the outcome, and a brief summary of that. Then it goes into an ethics section too, where they talk about, do you have any financial interest in being a judge? To be a judge, it is a great honor, but it's also a great sacrifice as well. So they would ask, what sorts of organizations are you a part of, community service and things of that nature. And so to become a judge, you would have to commit to reducing your participation in some of these things. You'd also have to commit to only having that as your source of employment and not having other sources of employment as well.
Now, I know, for example, my husband works in the financial services industry, and every year he has to fill out some documentation where we have 401ks here. If we had stocks or bonds, they're over here. Do you need to, as a judge, or an application for the bench, do you need to put forward and provide those types of information as well?
You don't need to provide things like your tax filings or things of that nature, but you would need to provide a statement that you wouldn't have a conflict of financial interest becoming a judge. So it really speaks to, do you have the educational background? Do you have the professional background? Are you ethical? And are you willing to commit the time necessary to be a judge? And so typically we'll see packets that are, a good 20 or 30 pages, depending on the candidate that comes through, and it goes and gets reviewed at the administrative level.
What's the first level of review?
You go, so it gets submitted, and then an administrative clerk reviews the application.
Who is the administrative clerk associated with? Are they associated with the Supreme Judicial Court? Are they associated with the legislature?
They would be associated with the court for which that person is applying.
Okay.
And then it would go to the Judicial Nominating Committee. So
Which is made up of what?
So the Judicial Nominating Committee is a body that is appointed by the governor's office.
Okay.
And so that committee, they go through the vetting process for that candidate. So they hold a series of hearings to understand whether or not that candidate can be a ethical judge, whether they meet all the minimum qualifications. once that hearing is done, then they take some time to really truly vet and make sure that everything in the application is above board.
Yes.
Right. So that may take several months, that may take up to a year. It really depends on the opening within that court system, and they want to make sure that they're doing their due diligence as well. So the candidate may be invited back a couple more times to make sure that they're able to do that before the board.
Is the application at that point or at any point open for public comment?
During the JNC application process?
Yes.
Typically, it's not during that process, but during the governor's council process, it is open.
Yes.
That makes
Oh,
sense.
Right,
yeah.
for comment.
So we filled out the application. No, because people need to know this step by step to understand. So I fill out the application. I go through a clerk. I go through the ethics board. What's my next step?
So the ethics board, the JNC board, and then your
What's
next
the
step,
JNC
that's
for?
the Judicial Nominating Committee.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after they do their various levels of review, then it goes through the governor's legal team
Okay.
for assistance. So the deputy counsel and the chief counsel then review the application and the notes from the Judicial Nominating Committee.
What are they looking for?
They're looking for any inconsistencies. They're looking for the person's capability based on their professional merits as well. They may pose question into some of the cases too. They may reach out to a judge that they've been before.
Practice before.
And make an assessment as to whether or not that should be elevated to the governor's desk.
Okay.
Once it's elevated to the governor's desk, then the governor invites the candidate for an interview as well.
Okay.
And so then the candidate and the governor have a conversation as well. And if the governor decides that this is a candidate that is worthy of being recommended to the governor's council, then they're referred over to the governor's council, and then they have to fill out a questionnaire for the governor's council.
So I've already done everything, including giving you a blood sample.
Yes. So we now know your blood type at this point.
And I'm not happy because I have a severe needle phobia.
And then, so they fill out the questionnaire. The questionnaire goes before the governor's council. And then each of the council, the governor's council is an 8-member body.
Okay.
The 8-member body represents the entire state. So each member represents roughly 400,000 constituents.
Okay.
So it's broken up in different
That's
capacities.
larger than a congressional district.
It is larger than a congressional district, yes. So, in District 5, it's 36 communities. District 2, it's 37. In District 8, it's about a little over 80 towns and cities that are represented by one
Does it go by
counselor.
population?
So it goes by population. So
Similar
all
to
in total.
Similar to if we have a state rep or a state senator or a congressman.
Right. So all in total, it's roughly each governor's council represents roughly 400,000 constituents within their district. So they go before the governor's council. Each governor's counselor has the opportunity to have a one-on-one discussion with the candidate as well, whether that's in person, over the phone, or virtually. For myself personally, I'll do a mix of all three to get to know the candidate before they come to our hearing.
Okay.
So then they go to the hearing, and that's the piece where they're able to bring witnesses who may be judges that they presided in front of. It may be colleagues that they've worked with in the field as well. Those are typically the two. Or it may be a mentor that they've had in the field that they've worked with closely.
Now let's pretend Stacey's applied. Okay. We'll pretend you're an attorney for yeah. So Stacey's applied.
Yes.
I've held cases on the opposing side,
Yes.
and
Interesting.
and I think she's a poor choice
Hey.
for a judge. I know what you're up to sometimes.
All above board.
Yes, yes, yes. But I think practicing against her for several years, not just like one case, but several years, I don't think she's the right person to be on the bench.
Yeah, because I've won all of them.
Possibly.
Possibly.
But I have, I have a pretty decent track record. And I want you to know,
Right.
she's obviously not going to call me in as a witness because she doesn't want me to be able to say
Right.
my piece. As another attorney, do I have the ability, is there some place I can look to see who's on the docket and I can go, ooh, Stacey, no.
Yes, definitely. So all of our hearings are posted on the Governor's Council website.
Where can you find that?
So it's mass.gov/Governor's Council, or if you just type in Governor's Council into
It'll come
Google,
up,
it will
yeah.
bring you right up. Because interestingly enough, the Governor's Council in Massachusetts is one of 2 bodies of the like in the country. So
Okay.
we have
Interesting.
Governor's Council here in Massachusetts and Executive Council in New Hampshire.
Oh,
So I'm not going to type in Governor's Council and all of a sudden find Minnesota,
A gazillion.
Montana, Florida, Kansas.
Yes.
And then I'm scrolling through going, where's Massachusetts?
It most likely will be the first
One, yeah.
thing that comes up in your search, even if you just put Governor's Council, not even the state.
Yep.
So it will be on our website. And then there are a couple ways that you can provide testimony opposing a candidate's candidacy. So you could either you can either provide it via written correspondence, so you can send an email to the Governor's Council clerk and she will distribute it to the full Governor's Council, or you can send an email to all the Governor's Council members individually or as a group yourself directly. You could sign up to speak during the hearing. You could come in person and speak. So once the witnesses have spoken in favor, the chair of that hearing will then ask if there's anyone wishing to speak in opposition. And then that would be your
Yeah.
opportunity to speak opposition in person. If you can't make it in person, you could also participate virtually to provide opposition.
But it's not closed. Like, she would know that I'm saying, maybe not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she would be there.
Yep.
So Stacey would be there during the hearing, being able to hear both sides, and then at the end, once sides in favor and sides opposing speak their piece, then the candidate, Stacey is our example.
Yeah.
Stacey would then give her candidate statement. Then once the candidate statement is given, then the floor is open to the Governor's counselors to ask questions of the candidate that are on the record. All of this is open because it is live streamed on our YouTube channel as well. So, if you
Have nothing to do
have
on
nothing
it.
to do and you want to engage
Democracy's
and
fame.
watch
Yes.
and watch our hearings. Hearings typically last about an hour. So if you want to watch the
That's
hearing, you just
reasonable.
That's
jump
very
on.
reasonable.
Yeah, you just go right on YouTube and you can
Yeah.
watch the hearing. You can also come to the hearing live. The hearings are open, as they said, so someone can come to any member of the public, even if you don't personally know the candidate, but you want to see the hearing
Right. Like
live.
if it's your community that you think might be affected,
Yes.
you can come in and watch.
You can come in and watch. The hearings are held within the Governor's Council chambers, which is on the 3rd floor
Yep.
of the
State House.
State
The
House.
State House, yeah.
Yes.
So,
And it is accessible as well. There's an elevator that comes right up to the 3rd floor, just a few steps away from where the chambers is. So there's no stairs needed in order to get to us,
That's good.
which is pretty neat. I think that they've at the State House done a good job at trying to make sure that the building is accessible for
Considering
everyone.
how old it is.
Yeah, that's,
Especially
That's
considering how old
impressive.
it is. In Massachusetts, for these historic buildings, sometimes it is very difficult to make something accessible,
yeah.
Yes.
and
Because of the
uphold
age.
the historic
Yep.
integrity
Exactly.
of the
Yeah.
building. And
Yeah,
so they've
I've
been
been
able
there
to
a few
do-
times. I think they have done a very good job of trying to find that balance. So I agree. And I think that's actually a really good segue because, I mean, you've done a great job explaining, because a lot of people don't know what this is. What is and I know we can kind of get into some of those other areas that you've talked about, like notary public, all of those things. But for the basis of the show, because we are a commission that focuses on disability issues, how do you see your work and just the council in general? What is the intersection with disability, and how that works maybe with the potential candidates for being a judge or some of those other areas? What have you seen? I know you've only been doing this a very short time, but what is your view or experience so far in that realm?
Yes. Well, for me personally, one of the things that I always ask every candidate is how they would impact expanding access to the courts, right? And we talk about access in various ways. We talk about language access, we talk about physical access, and I also pair that with a question around how they can reduce trauma. Right, because the two, you can't ask one without the other.
Yes. Right. Absolutely.
If someone is needing to go before the court for any reason, it already is a stressful situation.
Yes.
Of course.
Because they have to figure out if it's during the day, taking time off work, or getting transportation to there and parking. There are a lot of things that go into leaving your home to go
get
before
there,
the court, and then there's nerves and anxiety and all of that. So that is heightened if you have, a disability as well,
Yes,
right? So, because you're also thinking of, will I be able to hear everything? Will I be able to will there be an interpreter for me there? Will I be able to access the building with ease? So I ask all the candidates, what are resources that they can expand, that they're seeking to expand from the bench, and how do they create an environment where there's less harm, right? And it's been very insightful asking these questions of candidates, because I've had some candidates say, well, I would make sure to reach out to the advocates on both sides and ensure that they've spoken with their client and put in a request for an interpreter or put in a request for a special access or what have you. Because typically, if you're going before the court and you have, so there's two scenarios. There's one if you have representation, there's one if you don't have representation.
Yep.
So if you have representation, that the judge can hold the lawyers accountable to ensure that there is access, for that client, any access barriers for that client are addressed at least 72 hours before before the hearing, whether that's a language barrier, making sure there's an interpreter, if the session has to be held on the first floor, if it has to be held later in the day or earlier in the morning. All of these things are important too. So if someone's on a special like medication or what have you, and they have to take it at a certain time of day, right, they can move that hearing to make sure that it accommodates that person's health needs and concerns.
And attorneys are typically very good at that anyway. Let me ask you, in case somebody's concerned, I need ASL, for example, okay? My attorney says we need an interpreter, CART services are not appropriate in this particular case. How long, is it our responsibility as litigants to get the interpreter, or is that provided by the state free of charge?
So that is provided by the courts, free of charge, the individual. Now, if they have a lawyer, then the lawyer can make those provisions and make sure that interpreter is there. If they don't, then it would be upon them to make sure they reach out 72 hours in advance of the hearing to the ADA coordinator for that specific court. So if you go on to the mass.gov website and you type in mass.gov and you type in courts, you look for the ADA coordinator and you type in your city or town that you're going to be that you're going to be going before the courts in. So in this region, we have the Superior Court in Lawrence, we have District Court in Haverhill, so it most likely will be,
And we also have family court and judicial, and juvenile court in Lawrence as well.
yes, and so there are quite a few courts in Lawrence. And so, most likely you'll be going, there, because those are just the closest court systems to us here, right? You would have to look on the website to get the number for that particular ADA coordinator at least 72 hours in advance. Of course, if you, forget, they will work with you as well. They're not going to say absolutely not, and if it's a case that, you've forgotten and you've arrived at the court and you realize, oh, I can't participate in this hearing because I can't hear, I can't access, there's always an opportunity to reschedule.
Right.
I would encourage people, make sure you show up. Don't just not go to the hearings because then, no one will know why you decided not to go.
And that's a whole nother,
that causes a whole
issues
slew.
and you get into trouble pretty much for not showing up.
Right, so always show up, even if you feel, if you don't have representation, you haven't scheduled services, you forgot to, or what have you, or there was a barrier, still show up to the hearing and express that so that those resources can be addressed and put in place for you for a new hearing date. That's always the best course of action.
Do the clerks ever reach out when they see that a litigant is pro se, yes, I know, in legal terms, they're unrepresented, okay? They see, the person is unrepresented. Do the court clerks ever reach out and say to them, I know a lot of times people fill out a form at the beginning that says, but just in case, do you need anything in advance? We're 3 days before hearing. Do you need an interpreter of any sort? Do you need any assistance with access? Do they do that at all?
I don't know that they do. That's a good question, and that's something I want to, look into a little bit deeper. I know that the courts have so many cases that they're seeing every day, so I wouldn't be surprised if that piece is not happening. But I can't. It's unique based on the different court systems, so I can't say for sure whether one court's doing it or not. But I'll have to look into that because it would be good if they took that initiative. To do so.
Before clerks who I've worked before start screaming at me, they're extremely busy anyway. But people also should be aware of the fact that once the judge gets appointed and sworn in by the governor, you're done, right, with that particular individual. If there's any need for oversight, somebody finds out that the judge is unethical for whatever reason, that goes somewhere else, right?
Yes, that goes to the court administrator. So every court has a court administrator, which is the highest level of oversight for that particular court. That's their boss. That's the person that's making the rules, making sure that everyone is getting access to professional development trainings, making sure that they are getting all their court cases scheduled in a timely fashion, making sure that we have enough interpreters, making sure that we have enough clerks and clerical staff to assist with the day-to-day operations, overseeing the security of the court, you name it. They're the executive director of that particular court, if you will. So they would be the ones that would initially field any of those ethical concerns that take place. It's very uncommon for a judge to be removed from the bench. It is very rare in the state of Massachusetts.
Well, I think that makes sense given what the 7 or so steps, that so much vetting through the process. You want to make sure you're making that, solid decisions. So, and obviously having an administrator over the judge, like you say, their supervisor, but that's also kind of the checks and balances once they're in. But you do hope that, yes, once they through that extensive process, that you don't have to worry about it.
And the one thing I would also ask before we wrap up, judges who have disabilities themselves, how is that handled where, you know, and we'll keep the DEI and the affirmative action arguments out of it, but
Yeah.
if I'm hearing impaired or I'm verbally challenged, but I'm a lawyer, I'm practicing, and I know what I'm doing, and I have other ways of practicing law with tools that I have on a regular and consistent basis. Have you seen that come across? Do you know of that? How would you handle that?
Yeah, so I haven't myself personally vetted any candidates that have presented any access, concerns. But when that does come before us, that would be on the administrator to make sure that there's reasonable accommodations
Yes. Yeah.
for the judge, right? So that they can practice and they can practice without constraint, because these are lifetime appointments.
Yes.
So if a candidate is coming before us, and we've seen candidates in their 30s, we've seen candidates in their 40s and older, but when they come before us, they're looking at, a job
is
that they're
it.
going to
Yeah.
hold
Lifetime, this is.
until
yeah.
age 70,
Yeah,
right?
That's right, the cutoff point.
The cutoff
Right.
point is 70, so, lifetime, I guess you live a lifetime
Yeah.
at 70.
No, then you
but-
collect a pension.
Yes, then you collect a pension
Right.
and you get to travel and do all those things. But so they're serving for 20, 30 years, sometimes more, right? So we have to get it right, and we have to get it
Yeah.
right the first time.
Right.
So that's why the onus is on the Governor's Council in the end to
Yeah.
make sure that we're doing our due diligence by having these one-on-one meetings, by having these hearings, by listening to testimony for and against for the candidate, and then we make a decision as to whether we're going to approve that candidate. If the Governor's Council does not approve of a candidate, that candidate does not move forward. So it is very, very key. I can say of the candidates that we have seen, we've seen some very qualified candidates thus far that I haven't had issue with, thankfully. So it has been a nice experience to meet people who have gone through and dedicated their lives to helping others and want to take this step of being a judge and helping to extend resources to folks so that they can continue to live a productive life, whatever their particular court case involves.
And I think it's important to remind people that although in other states, judges are actually elected, in Massachusetts, they go through a different
Yeah, it's a
vetting
different
process. So that being the case, to understand what the Governor's Council is and does for the people who vote
Yep.
is extremely important, because we vote for you, and then we're putting, similar to when we vote for a state rep or a state senator, we're putting our trust in you, that you do,
You're representing
Yes.
us.
you
to
do
appoint-
right by
right,
us.
To appoint those
Exactly.
judges, so.
And I'm grateful for this structure too, because it's different. In an election, you really don't have much access to the candidate outside
Right.
of whether you've met them personally or if you read their bio online or what have you. But this is different in that you have that full access, right, to be able to see what that candidate is about and to have more, faith in the judicial process.
Yes,
you know.
and I know a lot of people, they're focused more on the federal courts because that's what's in the news. And you have nothing to do with the federal court.
Nothing at all to do with the federal court.
Just for,
All we could do is support the state
State
of
courts,
Massachusetts court system.
yes, I want to make that clear for everybody.
Yes.
But it's extremely important you do what you do to make sure that's.
We have a balanced court system.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
And one of the things that's so important to me is in this appointing of judges is doing a deeper review as to what the barriers are in our court system, right? What are some of the initiatives that judges can really push forward, right? We need more interpreters. We need more clerical staff within the court system so that cases can be heard at a more expedient rate. We know that there's a delay in cases being heard, right? And so by making sure that we're diligent in this process and looking for ways to make sure that it's it's efficient but expedient. We're able to tackle some of these delays in court cases, right? So that's something that's really, really important to me, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to our best ability to affect that.
And I'll put a plug in. We both work for the state, and every so often, you look and see what's
Yeah.
available. People, if you're an ASL interpreter, they desperately need you.
Desperately need, yeah.
Yes. Yes. So please apply to be an
We need them
interpreter.
across the board.
Yes.
It is not as arduous a process. There are many trainings that are out there to get you to a level where you're comfortable. But yes, the court system desperately needs ASL interpreters. They need interpreters with a variety of skills, but for sure.
Sure, ASL.
Yeah. And it is a fun role because you get to meet different people, and no day is the same as well. So if you know of anyone, there's and they're considering it, by all means, there's no real restrictions. So even if you're just graduating high school, and maybe you took ASL in high school, this could be a great opportunity for you to get involved and to help others.
That's fantastic. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, our time
I
has
know.
run down. I feel like it went very quickly.
Well, it's a lot of material to
It's a
cover.
lot of information, but
Yes.
so relevant. And so thank you so much for
well,
being here with us.
Thank you for having me and allowing me to have a conversation with you about the Governor's Council, this role that everyone now knows about.
Yes, the whole world will know.
And if you don't know, now you know. But-
You will understand what a reach this show has
Yes,
when we
in
close it
just
out.
about a minute.
Yeah. But I'm truly grateful for this time that we spent speaking, and I hope to come back and give you more updates
Absolutely.
as we
do.
continue on.
Absolutely,
Please do.
absolutely. You can reach Council Member Zeigler by calling the Governor's Council member main number at 617-725-4015, extension 5. You can also reach her via email at Eunice, that's EUNICE.Zeigler, ZEIGLER @mass.gov, and that will be in the credits as well.
And thank you to our crew this month, GLTS alum John Kafori and Northern Essex Community College student Cassie Bawano.
In April, our friends from the Federation for Children with Special Needs will be back to discuss their new respite care program. And our friend, State Auditor Diana DiZoglio, will be joining us for a special second episode in April. In May, we'll be joined by State Representative Adrian Ramos. We are consistently looking for new topics to explore here at Ability Assistance. We would truly love to know what topics you want to know more information about. If there are any specific topics that you would like to learn more about, please email me directly at pjones@northandoverma.gov or call me. It actually does go to my cell phone, 978-494-0136. And in addition to watching through your traditional cable station, you can catch all of our programs on demand via YouTube, the Cablecast app through Roku and Apple TV. You can also find the Cablecast app through your phone or tablet stores for your app stores, the Town of North Andover's website, the Commission's Facebook page, North Andover CAM's website, YouTube. If I didn't say YouTube,
So, yep, you already
YouTube.
did.
Yep, and via podcast on Podbean.